This video will contain mild violence and major spoilers. Supervillains are a mark of fiction that can never truly be wiped off. And let's be honest, who would want to wipe it off? The conflict that they drive can create some of the most riveting and interesting stories. Whether it be the cold, calculated thief like Lupin, or the sheer insane mind of the Joker, evil has taken many forms throughout all of media. But sometimes these villains aren't all they seem outside. All it can take is a single spark of good in life to turn the villains kind or even into a hero. And in the case of these two misunderstood evil geniuses, they've had these kind of stories that have plagued both the internet and the movie industry for all to see. For better or for worse. Gru, the despicable leader of the minions turned loving father. And Megamind, the evil alien super brainiac turned Metro City's protector. Both of these two have proven the phrase never judge a book by its cover to be true, but what if their dangerous sides duked it out to find out which one's true side will be left to be explored for another day. I'm your host Sprite, and it's mine and many others' job to analyse these two characters' origin, story and feats to find out who would win a Sprite fight. We interrupt this Sprite fight to bring you breaking news. The moon has been stolen by a maniacal mind. What kind of villain could pull off something so dastardly, so evil, so wicked, so despicable? This is Villainous Gru. You may take one look at him and think he's just a grumpy, bold, cruel, dead dog joking bloke voiced by Steve Carell, but he's significantly more dangerous than he seems. But he didn't start out this way. Born into a separated marriage and being the second pick between twins, Gru's mum never really cared about him or any of his passions of going to the moon, nor would she actually show him any sort of love or affection. Things weren't much better at school due to...
Lisa's got crudies!
Yeah. Thus Gru decided the only way to make himself known was to accept the way he was being treated, and the way he was being given more cold shoulders than a group of shirtless bliggity blokes in standard English weather. He would merge this treatment into inspiration and motivation for becoming a supervillain. He certainly had the brain to be one after all. Even as a child, he could build a working rocket and a giant flying motorcycle. And he would soon have help on his villainous journey with his literal partners in crime, such as the minions, who, despite looking and being oversized mango-flavoured Tic Tacs, these monsters are significantly more powerful than they seem. The banana-loving freaks are billions of years old, and they're basically invulnerable, being able to tank rockets, heavy objects falling on them, and even a giant detonation that popped a large bubble gun, which, while not sounding impressive, would take 15 kilotons of TNT. That's as much as the bomb that dropped on Hiroshima, but despite their invulnerability, they are extremely incompetent, albeit they can get serious when the situation really calls for it. They're especially useful when you remember that there are over 10,000 of them. Gru essentially has an entire town on his payroll. No wonder there's no raises. Now that Gru had brawn on his side, he needed more brain. Introducing Joseph Albert Nefario, aka Dr. Nefario, a witty, sarcastic, overly condescending British bloke who... Hey, wait a minute. Dr. Nefario is an unparalleled genius inventor, and responsible for the vast majority of Gru's equipment. With an army on his side and evil Albert Einstein, Gru's villainous deeds became a lot more, well, villainous, and this was significantly amplified with his impressive arsenal, such as his very first gadget, the long-range sticky hand. He also has a freeze ray capable of freezing someone entirely solid, a gigantic blaster cannon capable of obliterating a carnival stand, and his minions have plenty of their own explosive and melee weapons. And he has his very best weapon, the fart gun, that shoots farts, and yeah, that's about it. With all this backing him up, you would be forgiven for thinking that Gru wouldn't already have cemented himself as the greatest villain of all time. But he had been upstaged by someone who managed to steal the Pyramid of Giza, the real one, instead of a small fake version from Las Vegas. Thus, Gru put another one of his evil plans to fruition in order to blow the pyramid thing out of the water. He would steal the moon. Yes, that gigantic rock in the sky.
Now I know that sounds crazy and a bankruptcy speedrun, and that's because it was. The bank's trust in Gru's sinister plots was deteriorating. Very few of his plots were actually turning out a profit, so Gru was forced to go and steal the shrink ray, a truly ingenious device that could shrink down objects massively, before he could get the proper loan. But a certain bloke swooped in with direction and magnitude to steal the shrink ray from Gru, who had just stolen the shrink ray. This was Vector, the same guy who stole the pyramid earlier in the story. He held a great advantage over Gru, according to the bank manager at least, and that was youth. Vector's more advanced technology outpaced Gru's. Gru tried to steal back the shrink ray, but after taking that explosion worth 0.09 tons of TNT, Gru realized he needed another way in, and there was a group of girls selling cookies who he had met earlier. Gru noticed Vector loved cookies, so he ordered Nefario to make a selection of cookie robots. No, Nefario, I said cookie robots. Cookie robots. Cookie robots! Gru adopted the girls to unknowingly sneak the cookie robots into Vector's base and successfully steal the shrink ray. But Gru started to feel an attachment towards the girls, as they showed him a kind of love he'd never actually experienced. They weren't adoring fans or had a colleague-like friendship with him, but genuine care and love. He even made a promise to attend their dance recital for them. But they were a massive distraction for Gru stealing the moon mission, and even caused the bank to cut funding for his organization. But Gru didn't give up. He and the minions used whatever they could find to build the rocket and reach the moon. Unfortunately, Dr. Nefario was forced to send the girls back to the orphanage to prevent any further distractions. So Gru finally got into the rocket, achieving his dream of going to the moon and stealing it. But then he saw the ticket to the dance recital and remembered he had made a promise, and he was going to at least try and fulfill it. But he was too late, and worse, he found out Vector had captured the girls after the dance recital had ended. But like a true dad would, Gru went to go save them, and finally defeated Vector. After defeating Vector with direction and magnitude, Gru became a proper dad, one that loved his daughters. And he realized they didn't just make him happy, they changed his heart. But then we got 3 more blooming movies because
we've got to have money.
Well, I guess 2 and 3 weren't that bad. Gru got into many more misadventures, and had much more feats in scaling. He can scale to characters who can tank being smacked through buildings, sent flying through walls, and Vector, who has surprisingly consistent time level stuff, such as shaking a crater, being dragged up by a rocket, or even the moon smacking into him, which would require a force of 100 kilotons of TNT. That's the same energy of nearly 7 Hiroshima bombs. While this seems shaky, characters like Scarlet Overkill can tank large explosions like this one, which will be getting into a similar range. Gru himself has shown to be capable of one-shotting sharks. This shark looks to be like a great white, which can weigh anywhere from 0.68 to 1.8 tons. That's as much as a car. Even as a child, Gru has shown the capability to rip off a clock hand and use it as a weapon of sorts. Gru doesn't lack when it comes to speed feats either. He can dodge missiles at Mark 10, scale to people who are fast enough to react to what could be laser fire, but we can't totally be sure. And then there's Vector again, who while being trapped on the moon, attempted to escape by shooting himself back to the Earth, but instead it sent him flying across the moon instead, within seconds, and he was moving fast enough to latch onto a rock nearby with his arm. That may not seem impressive, but we would have to be moving at massively hypersonic speeds in order to latch on to that rock. I'm sorry, are we sure this guy's 50? Is he in the Matrix or something? Is he blooming Neo? And after Gru adopted the girls, he got a brand new job making delicious jams and jellies.
Whoa!
Oh, and also joining the AVL to become a spy. During the later movies, Gru's arsenal was more well established. He has a goo gun which can crystallize to hold people in place, a laser gun, a lipstick taser gifted to him by his new wife Lucy, a jelly gun, and he still canonically has the shrink ray. Okay, I know we've been bringing up this thing quite a bit, but it's truly one of, if not his best weapon. It can shrink anything, from people to his airship to even the entire moon. Gru also has access to an airship, which can fly around at high speeds, shoot machine gun fire, and deploy gigantic missiles capable of causing small explosions that should be comparable to his own durability. And back to the minions, when Maxime Lamal was after him, 5 minions, unwillingly, volunteered to go under an experiment that would give them super increases in power and abilities. These were the Megaminions. They were now the frontrunners of the minion army. One can fly, the other has stretchy powers capable of stopping and sending a train flying backwards. Another had strength, capable of tearing apart metal. Another was capable of shooting a laser powerful enough to vaporize a hole through the planet. And the last one became so invincible they could tank that very same laser. With all of these weapons, feats, intelligence, and even some martial arts training, Gru has his fair share of accomplishments. He's defeated the legend Vector, the terrifying Spanish wrestler El Macho, and the former 80s star Balthazar Brat. Even as a child, he beat Scarlet Overkill, the greatest villain of the time. Albeit he caught her off guard, but she was fast enough to keep up with people who can block a missile, so she's one tough person to catch off guard. Gru and his army may not be perfect. Gru often relies on other people to make his equipment. Nefaria may be slightly old and frail, and the minions may be extremely incompetent. But in the end, these guys are not just a crime syndicate, they're basically a family, and they will do anything to protect each other. Gru had trouble trying to fill in the gaps in his life, and it wasn't easy to accept the new people along the way. But in the end, he was happy. He'd finally rised above the way he was treated when he was younger, and became a better person. He tried using the girls to prove himself as a villain, but his experiences with them, his wife, and the reuniting with his brother proved himself to be a hero.
I got you!
I know what you may be thinking. Who's this blue fellow with a forehead the size of Nottingham falling to his death? Well, what if I told you his story was an intriguing one, full of love, hate, rivalry, and redemption? But in order to fully understand him, we need to go back to the beginning. The very beginning. Light years away, an entire race is in panic mode. They were about to have their entire planet destroyed. So 2 parents decided to send their baby off to a different planet, hoping he would find a better life. And he was destined for... well, he wasn't quite sure. The baby was sent to Earth along with Mr. Goody Two-Shoes, who was another baby from a neighbouring planet. When they arrived to Earth, Mr. Goody Two-Shoes landed in a rich family, while our protagonist landed in prison. Not a very good start. While being raised in prison, he was taught bad guys good, police bad. Which is kind of true when you look at things like V for Vendetta. Luckily for both babies, Mr. Goody Two-Shoes was granted with invulnerability, super flight, and great hair. Meanwhile, our protagonist was granted with a super geniusness, I guess. Is that a word? He's capable of making technology far beyond that of any regular human. After a few years and some time off for being well behaved, he was sent to school, but everyone painted him as an outcast. And despite him trying to show off his amazing inventions, he would be upstaged by, you guessed it, Mr. Goody Two-Shoes. He would always be the odd one out and the last one picked. But then one day, it hit him. If he was treated as the bad boy, he would be the baddest boy around. This started our protagonist and Mr. Goody Two-Shoes' good versus evil rivalry that would last almost their entire lives. Mr. Goody Two-Shoes took the name of Metro Man, defender of Metro City. But our main character took a more stylish name, Megamind, master of all villainy. Oh yeah baby, we're in bad to the bone territory now. And Megamind is so bad, he isn't just bad to the bone, he passes through the bone. And in order to fight the strongest man in the world, he would need more than his deviously good looks. As I've already mentioned, Megamind is an unparalleled genius, capable of making weapons far beyond that of any military grade equipment, such as the D-gun, which he mostly uses to dehydrate people with and turn them into a cube, only returning to normal form after coming in contact with water, but it has multiple modes, all of which are up on screen. But he has more, such as knockout gas, jetpacks, steel gauntlets, and a watch that can make him look like anyone he wants to. And when he wants to get serious, he pulls out the giant robot the size of a building, which is even capable of sort of tussling with Metro Man. But even with an arsenal this powerful, he would always find himself defeated by that overly smug, phenomenally chiseled jawline, "Hello everybody, son of a gun, Metro Man." And when he was charged with these crimes, he racked up an 85 life sentence. However, no prison could hold him for very long. He'd always find a way to break out, and his escapes, as well as villainy in general, was made a lot easier with his minions, such as his minion, Minion.
Gave me a new name, Old Chum.
Well, anyway, he has a giant robot suit, in which he's strong enough to lift a statue and easily knock people out with one shot. He's also capable of dodging a falling star, which would put him on a massively hypersonic range of speed, and Megamind should be able to keep up with him. But Minion isn't the only minion Megamind has. He has the surprisingly adorable, yet surprisingly effective Brainbots. These bad boys are equipped with 2 robotic hands, strong enough to lift entire buildings in large groups. They can also fly, fast enough to cover large distances in short amounts of time, even temporarily outpacing explosions. They have metal shawls capable of biting, and can merge together to make a very nice presentation head. And it becomes especially useful when you remember that there are over 100,000 of them. Well, at least he doesn't have to pay them. You do have to wonder how much oil he's using up though. Megamind doesn't just have his minions doing the heavy lifting, often entering the fray himself, or at least with some kind of technology backing him up. I know that you may be questioning, damn, this guy is truly impressive, but how the hell is he gonna beat a guy who's essentially a Superman clone? Well, after endless battles, Megamind's latest plan was to fire a laser at Metro Man, harnessing the power of the sun. After trapping him in a laboratory and readying the death ray, it was warming up, so it seemed like his plan was doomed to fail once again. But Metro Man realized he couldn't escape, as the building was laced with copper, which strained his powers, at least according to him. And after Megamind shot down the laser, which output an explosion worth 2 megatons of TNT, it seemed like Metro Man's life warranty had expired and he didn't get an extended warranty. Finally, Megamind succeeded in his lifelong goal in ruling the city, and proving all the naysayers kinda right. Yeah, he may have gotten what he wanted, or at least what he convinced himself he wanted, but he still felt empty and isolated. With Metro Man dead, the only thing that gave him purpose in life was gone. So what was the point of being a supervillain with no superhero to combat, exchange witty banter with, or come to the beck and call of the lover he put in danger? After an awkward run-in at the Metro Man Museum, Megamind disguised himself as one of Roxanne's acquaintances. They had a talk about Metro Man, and that conversation made Megamind realize heroes aren't born, they're made. So he came up with the plan of using Metro Man's dandruff, extract the DNA, and use that to find a worthy person to replace Metro Man. However, after running with Roxanne at his base and some boom boom action, Roxanne's cameraman Hal Stewart was affected by the Metromancer. He was skeptical at first, but Megamind saw some non-existent potential in Hal, so he pretended to be Hal's space parents. Thus he turned this no accomplishment incel into a super-powered incel. Yeah, it turns out giving someone like Hal superpowers wasn't the best idea. Hal was only in it to get the girl, and after being rejected for, taking a girl out on the flight without her consent, and just being a creep in general, Hal kinda lost it. He became something different. He wasn't Hal anymore, he was Titan. Spelt wrong, of course. Yeah, you remember him, dork-turned supervillain who may or may not have been brutally murdered by Homelander the last time the franchise was on the show. Yeah, that one. Well, hey, at least Megamind isn't totally outmatched in any fighting situation. He has some insane power in the form of his weapons. I kinda glazed over them, but I have to emphasize, this tech is insane. His suit is capable of giving him super strength, flight, and laser vision. Not quite on the same level as Metro Man, but enough to flip a gigantic Megabot, which would require over 618 tons of TNT, enough power to destroy a few city blocks. And as I mentioned, he can fly at high speeds, poorly, and fire lasers at people, poorly. Yeah, the suit does give him insane physical stats, but he's not very good at using it. But he has more to make up for it in the form of his gigantic robot suit, which is strong enough to face against the Titan, as I've mentioned before, who can toss gigantic buildings and send over 100,000 brainbots flying away, both of which are in the city block to town level ranges. The Megabot is a ginormous robot programmed to fight Metro Man, capable of lifting cars and shooting vehicles with its crossbow arm, and causing large explosions. He also has an orbital laser, or the Death Ray as I mentioned earlier, a freeze gun, stink bombs, a spider bot, a spider bot, to crawl around on surfaces, and it has a laser, a flamethrower with an invisible car, which, well, what do you think it does? Your eyes may lead you to think that Megamind is pretty scrawny and a loser strength-wise, and you would be correct, but he picks up in terms of speed and durability. He was fast enough to react to Titan's attacks, who is capable of breaking the sound barrier just by flying, which would require at least Mark 1. He could also walk the entire Grand Canyon in a very short amount of time, which would require him to move at least Mark 4, and that was him walking. As for durability, he tanked this large explosion at over 8 tons of TNT, and even the Megabot falling on him, by taking the calculated weight of the bot and the height he fell from, and the surface area of Megamind's body, he must have been taking a force of 25 tons of TNT, enough energy to destroy a city block, and Megamind got up no worse for wear. Despite all the destructive capability he has, he found himself enjoying being around the person he tried to cause the most destruction to, Roxanne. He was disguised, but it still felt real. Unfortunately, this tore a gap between him and Minion, as Megamind didn't even seem like he wanted to do evil things anymore. When Roxanne discovered Megamind was the one she was dating, she dumped him, forcing him to go back to the villainous life that defined him for so long. After tempting Titan with some stuff he probably shouldn't be telling a man who could fold him like a blanket, Megamind's brilliantness allowed him to stand up against Titan, but he was unfortunately overwhelmed. When Megamind told Titan to take him to jail, Titan basically said, "Nuh-uh, you're dead." Megamind was able to barely get away with his life, and he realized he messed up. And now there was a supervillain with the power of the strongest man on Earth that was putting the city under new management. So he and Roxanne were forced to team up and go to Metro Man's base. But it turns out he didn't actually die. Yeah, it turns out Metro Man had rethought his entire life and decided not to be a superhero anymore, using his super speed in order to fake his own death. This left both Megamind and Roxanne in shock, and Megamind lost all will to fight against the new threat. So he turned himself in, and opted to sulk in prison for the rest of his now 88 life sentences. But after an emotional message from Roxanne and a threatening threat from Titan, Megamind realized he shouldn't give up. After making amends with Minion, he disguised himself as Metro Man to scare Titan away. But when he took off the disguise, everyone watching was shocked, but he didn't really seem to care. Roxanne's reassuring smile was all he needed.
Pretty sneaky, sis. But there's only one person I know who calls this town Metrocity.
Oops.
Ooh, yeah. When Titan came to fight back, Megamind, instead of being someone he's not, uses incredible inventions and quick thinking to somehow beat Titan. That's when Megamind realized that fate isn't just something that's there. We can affect the way our lives go. We can't let all decisions of people affect the stuff we do in the now. And Megamind, he chose the path of redemption, which is great because he's also endurant and stubborn as hell. You can punch him with enough force to crack a wall, blow him up, even tell him directly to his face you are going to murder him, and he'll keep getting up Because that's who Megamind is. Someone who will push against any challenge, even if he knows he has absolutely no chance of winning. And now he's Metro City's protector? It's safe to say, the city is in good hands. Megamind may be pretty physically scrawny, and his brainbots can be taken out by building level explosions. And it did take him a long time to come to a redemption. But in the end, he saved the day. It doesn't matter how many flaws he has, or how many flaws anyone has. People can change their ways. They can turn to good, and finally succeed in becoming not just a hero, but a super one.
Hello.
Thing about bad guys, they always lose!
Righty ho ho, the results are in and the combatants are set. It's time for a sprite fight. She's not one to be dealt with kindly, Phileas. If required, lethal force is allowed. Understood. I will report back when the mission is, hopefully, completed. Very good, Agent Crew. Be careful. I've got to play this safe. He's probably sneaking around somewhere. But it's not like he'd be dumb enough to show himself out in the open. Well, I happily stand corrected. What in the... Hello, Megamind, I presume, based on the gigantic walking spider. FYI, you are quite literally leaving bombs all over my yard, and I don't appreciate that. So could you please come down here, and I'll make this easy for the both of us. And why should I listen to a bold loser with a dad bod? Get lost before I take the most horrific pain you've ever felt in your life, and multiplied by 6. Oh, I see. Whoa! Better idea. Why don't I multiply it by 7? What do you have to say to that?
Well, I'd have to say that you're under arrest. Courtesy of the Anti-Villain League.
Oh, I'm going to enjoy this. Holy sh! Why the sprite track turned to pulse fast? Oh god! Wait, what? Damn. It was a decoy.
Oh, honestly, Gru, I didn't actually think that would work, but thank you for proving me wrong. You didn't think I didn't know that the AVO was going to send one of their agents after me? Granted, my information on you was scarce, but I lacked of more than enough prep time to defeat the likes of you. How's your planning going? Whoa, what was...
Well, I'd say it's going pretty well, thank you.
Oh, this'll make things more interesting.
Banana!
Nice of you to join us, Dr. Mafario.
Don't fight me yet, Gru.
Nicely done, Dr. Navarro. Now let's... Wait, what? Great. There was another diversion.
Oh, tooth for tricking you, Gru. You were a good villain, Gru, but there was one thing separating you from being a super one.
And what's that, Megamind?
Presentation!
Oh no! Navarro! Eat this, hero.
You two, come and meet. Dave, you and the others hold things here. Minion!
The death ray! Fire immediately! Maximum power!
What I say, presentation.
Impossible! Minion, fire again! Ah!
Thanks for the save, Jetty. Dr. Nefario, you'll take them somewhere safe. I'll stop the death ray.
Listen here, Megamind. To defeat me, you do not have to have presentation. To defeat me, you don't even have to be evil. To defeat me, you have to be despicable.
Sir, are you alright? Oh, for fuck.
Mission accomplished. Megamind is neutralized.
Oh, very well done, Agent Gru. You've just saved the AVL a lot of trouble.
Roger that. Agent Gru out.
You know, I was going to point out how we don't see a body, so Megamind might not be dead, but I don't think there's going to be anybody left to find after that. But even with Gru being the one to come out on top here, and not having his body be the one that was vaporized, he could only do that after the fight of his life in a super close matchup. I can't actually blame anyone for thinking that Megamind was going to win this one. It wasn't impossible for him to win in quite a few scenarios. But Gru just had a couple tricks up his sleeve that ended up with him winning more times than not. Strap in, ladies and gentlemen, as we're about to discuss what might be the closest fight we've ever had on the show. So let's break it down into 7 categories. Starting off with physicality, aka strength and durability. This was an obvious category, at least strength-wise. Megamind was pretty much featless when it came to strength. Meanwhile, Gru can one-shot sharks and rip off clock hands as a child. Durability was a similar case. Megamind's best and most consistent feats were dwarfed by the higher tier Despicable Me feats. Just looking at Vector's rocket yanking feat puts Gru way up the ladder. Combining this with Megamind's lack of combat capabilities, and Gru should take this pretty easily. But the coin completely flips when you look at intelligence. Don't get me wrong, Gru is no doubt a genius, but when you take in the context of what the characters have done in their time, it's easy to figure out who gets IQ. Megamind's best inventions were easily more impressive than what Gru could do, and besides, Gru mostly relies on Nefario and the minions to build and work his machines, while Megamind does it almost all himself. While Gru's street smarts and own inventions allowed him to close the gap a little, it's obviously an advantage for Megamind. Arsenal was a lot closer than you may think. Both can match a lot of what the other had. They both had freeze guns, methods of shrinking, albeit Gru's is likely better, flamethrowers, etc, etc. Gru did have some aces in the hole arsenal-wise, with more on-hand weaponry, but when it came to overall destructive power, Megamind took it in stride. His mech, dehydration gun, and sun laser were all things that either outclassed Gru's durability and AP, or just bypassed it entirely. One hit from either of those and the fight would be over instantly. Now, generally people would use these two categories as enough of a reason to give Megamind a win, and once again, if you believe this, I cannot blame you in the slightest. They are usually the categories most important when talking about what makes an evil genius an evil genius. However, that's who's a better evil genius debate, not a 1v1 who would win in a fight debate, where there's still more categories to go through. Let's take a look at their experience. This was actually more clear-cut than most people realise. Sure, Megamind did fight Metro Man, but the problem is, his whole career was just him spending time losing to the same person over and over again. He built up his whole arsenal and mindset just to beat Metro Man. Meanwhile, Gru has experience in a variety of missions, and has actually succeeded on most of them. Combining this with Gru's AVL training, his experience with fighting people similar to Megamind, and the martial arts training that he got, and yeah, he surprisingly takes the edge. Next up was that draw speed. which was easily the most important physical category. Granted, Megamind took an edge in physical running speed via the Grand Canyon journey, but combat reaction speeds was where it really mattered. Megamind's best scaling was to minion dodging a falling star, of which have varying speed, but generally average out to a speed of around Mach 156. Definitely impressive and nothing to laugh at, but let's take another look at that Vector Moon feat. Considering the circumference of the moon, the fact that he flew around half of it in half a second, and he would have to be moving around it at Mach 8000. However, it was quite a distance away from the rock that he latched onto. We'll use this image as a reference for the length of his arms. Via the height of Vector, and comparing it to the length of the arm, this means that he would have to be moving at a blistering speed of Mach 860 just to catch it, making him over 5 times faster than Megamind, giving him the edge. Since both had plenty of methods to end the fight almost instantly, Wincons was a tough call to make. Megamind has the D-Gun, Death Ray, Giant Mech, and Metroman suit, and Gru has the Shoot Ray, Freeze Ray, and various set of missiles. The Death Ray would require Megamind to lure Gru into the observatory, which would be tricky as Gru ain't stupid, and he could just, leave while it's charging up. And the Metroman suit wasn't going to be much of a help either. Megamind is utterly terrible at using it, and it doesn't increase his durability, so there's nothing really stopping Gru from just one-shotting Megamind. The only options that he had that were completely reliable was the D-Gun settings, which could bypass Gru's durability entirely, but since Gru had the greater speed, his options were far more unlikely to occur. With this, he could electrocute Megamind, freeze him, shrink him down, or just simply stomp him physically. As you can see, Gru's Wincons were just way more useful and more likely to be brought out first, giving him the edge in this category. Finally, there was the case of their armies, and Megamind certainly looked better on paper. The Brainbots massively outnumbered the minions. They could fly, and they were physically stronger lifting wise via lifting up the gigantic skyscraper. However, once again, the minions are basically invulnerable. The Brainbots could die to so much as a stick of dynamite exploding with at best building level attack bonusing. However, the minions could tank a power comparable to a nuke, so the Brainbots had borderline no way to get past that durability. And the minions had just as much experience as the Brainbots did, likely even more due to their super age. And we cannot avoid talking about the Mega Minions, who were easily the heaviest hitters of Gru's army. They could definitely take down most of the Brainbots without effort. And remember the laser that could pierce the planet? That would be a force requiring at least 30 megatons of TNT, more than enough to wipe out a large chunk of the Brainbots, and 15 times more powerful than the Death Ray. There was nothing that Megamind had that could survive that level of power, not even the Megamind. You could even account for a minor advantage that Gru had over Megamind's army, and that was the fact that he just simply treated his own army like a family. They all loved each other and would absolutely defend anyone from damage in the army, which may not sound like a gigantic advantage, but Megamind mostly treats the Brainbots as cannon fodder, which would mean that he would likely be much less concerned when his numbers started dropping until it's too late. Combining this with Megamind's more playful and showboating nature, it would mean that his army would drop way quicker, and when he realised that he needed to stop playing around, it would be too late and he would not have the sufficient numbers needed to win, giving Gru the vast majority of the advantages and netting him the win in this fight. The Master of all Villainy would certainly give Gru a run for his money, with his insane intelligence and devastatingly powerful and destructive weaponry. But failing is his greatest strength, faster reflexes, superior Wincons, more united army, and years of villainy carried him to victory. Looks like the former Metro City terrorizer should have just minded his own business before things got gruesome. I'm sorry, those puns were just despicable. The winner is Gru.
Back to work! Back to work! Back to work!
Sucks, don't it? The moment you realize you don't know shit.
Whatever in creation exists without my knowledge exists without my consent.